Afternoon, folks. 2.5 years ago, I think it was at least that, when I decided to do this, right, and I had two blackboards, the first two that I ever put up, these are I'm sure they are, the very first words I ever wrote. A fact is information minus emotion. An opinion is information plus experience. Ignorance is an opinion lacking information, experience. Stupidity is an opinion that ignores a fact. All of it so true, right? Now, I've got some few bits and pieces to read from a book, and we're going to watch a 1 minute and 20-second video clip. The book, The Secrets of the Oceans, 1980. Now, if you were to try and find something that was written in 1980 on Google, something like that, what would you write? Would you say, what was written or what was known in 1980 about such and such? Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. So what you have in here probably seriously overruled and superseded by the stuff that's on there. Let's have a look at, let's do the popcorn session first. Right. I'll be very surprised if those of you that follow what I say haven't already seen this, right? This is the tides, time lapse, the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia. Right, settle down at the back, settle down, sit down, or we're not going to do this. That's better. Now that's 12 hours. Out or in and out. Now, the other day, when I was talking, and I said that why is it when you're out deep, so you're fishing, right, and you've got tide going in one direction, because if you're out at sea, you can feel the current, but can't be so sure if it's going up or down. It comes, let's say it's coming in, you're 30 miles out or whatever. The current is crazy, it stops. It's like it gets to the high tide, hangs about for half an hour, something like that, and slowly starts to drop and then speeds up again. But it goes in the same direction it came. I've not been able to move too far past that, thinking about it. If it was the moon creating the tides, right, is that what you would expect to see? If the water is chasing the bulge, or is the bulge and it's the moon, would you expect to see the tide move, come up, and then drop and go back down? Because the water out deep gets chaotic. Now, secrets of the oceans. Look, I could sit down and read the whole of this book because it's pretty cool. But we don't have time for that, do we? Water's constantly on the move, all right? The world ocean is constantly on the move and in every direction. Anyone who stands on a beach can see this. Tides ebb and flow, the surface ripples, waves rush in and break. All is in constant motion. However, these readily observable movements are mere ripples on the surface of the world's oceans compared to the underlying total flow. It is all on the move, steadily and inexorably, in the great worldwide flow of oceanic currents. These currents have been known for a long time. Sailors have used them for centuries to speed their progress across the oceans. Some of these, like the Gulf Stream, are fairly well charted, but whatever is known about them, the mystery of why they flow is not yet known. The mystery of why the currents flow was not known. All right? It's important that you listen to this. Why don't we have more information about oceanic currents? One reason is that only in recent years have scientists become fully aware that oceanography, the study of the oceans, and meteorology, study of the weather, should not be treated as different branches of the earth sciences. Now this is 1980, right? That's 45 years ago. It might seem amazing that this awareness has developed so recently when the oceans and their currents play such a major part in the system that maintain life on this planet. But although fairly comprehensive charts of currents and winds have been available to mariners since the mid-19th century, each major current was considered in isolation, and not much connection between the currents and winds had been established. It is only within the past 70 years that scientists have been studying directly the theory and principles of oceanic circulation to ask what makes the oceans move around. There is still some debate about the water's movements. Some scientists say that the main cause of movement of most oceanic currents is by the drag of prevailing winds on the surface. Others say that it is due to differences in water density, uneven heating, rainfall, and evaporation, combined with the effects of wind. 1980. They didn't know what was creating the mad currents. Right. Now we're going to the tides and their pattern of motion. I've highlighted a couple of things. Now, this is where it isn't enough to just look at the screen, play games in the background and half listen to what I'm saying. You need to listen to understand, right? Not for an exam tomorrow where it's multiple choice. This is to understand the content, what I am actually going to say, all right? 1980, Tides and waves are the most easily seen evidence of the moving sea. More is known about tides than about many other ocean phenomena, and they have been observed for many centuries. When the Greek explorer Pytheas sailed to Britain in 325 BC, he formulated how spring or high and neap or low tides are related to the phases of the moon. The dictates of trade and war forced early mariners to study tidal patterns. 325 BC. He's going to the UK. He formulated how spring, high, neap, all of these tides, right, had to do with phases of the moon. Got to remember this, right? The link between sun, moon, and tides has therefore been observed for centuries. However, people did not know the reasons for the interaction. The why of it was provided by Isaac Newton in 1687 with his principle of gravitational pull, on which the whole basis of tidal movements rest. Here we are, up again. Newton. According to Newton's scientific finding, every single piece of matter on Earth is attracted by the gravitational pull of the moon. Even the land has tides, but because it is a solid crushed on the liquid mantle of Earth, it moves very slightly. Fluids move so much more that there is a tidal range in any body of liquid, even in a cup of tea or coffee, if you could possibly measure it. Now, here we are again. What is being said here doesn't coincide with anything anyone has ever seen, not on this planet, because a cup of tea, there should be tidal range, tidal effects going on in that glass of water. But, just too small to see. What about the Caspian Sea that has 3.5 times the amount of water in it than all of the, it has more water in the Caspian Sea than 3.5 times all of the American lakes, the Great Lakes, right? Those 5 Great Lakes put together, and the Caspian Sea has just over 3.5 times the amount of water, all of them combined. And it says here, fluids move so much more. There is a tidal range in any body of liquid, even in a cup of tea or coffee, if you could possibly measure it. Now, there's a big difference between the Caspian Sea and a cup of coffee. There is no tidal movement in any single ocean or sea, lake, anything that doesn't have a direct connection to one of the oceans. Right, we're going to carry on. Where's my glasses? I hope you're listening properly. To understand why tides vary in height and frequency in different parts of the world, imagine a smooth surfaced globe completely covered by water, around which the moon revolves every 28 days. I got rid of the solar eclipse, and the sun during a solar eclipse is directly behind the moon, right? You must know this. The sun is directly behind the moon. Stupidity is an opinion that ignores a fact. I'll let you guys ponder on that one. Right. Each particle, so this is the globe, the moon orbits every 28 days. Each particle of water is attracted towards the center of the moon. But the farther away it is from the center, the weaker the attraction. So the waters nearest the moon are more strongly attracted to it. So I took the liberty of drawing the usual bulge picture. Moon. Daisy the cow. It's been ages. She was well happy. Earth, the moon. The moon is 30 Earth diameters from us. The moon is 30 Earth diameters from us. Earth is 3.7 times the moon's diameter. We are 3.7 times bigger than the moon. The moon is 0.27 of the Earth's diameter. It's 110 of its own diameters away from us. That's a coincidence, nearly a coincidence, because the sun is 108, isn't it? It's a close one. Now, I've got a bit of chaos in the background, but it's not so bad that we cannot continue. The waters nearest the moon are more strongly attracted to it. Here's the bulge. Right? Attracted to the moon. That's 30 Earth diameters away from us, and is only just over a quarter of our size. Alright? And consequently are drawn out from the Earth's surface in a bulge. Because the Earth is rotating, centrifugal force is exerted. Centrifugal. That's... Is it not? Centrifugal is the one that pushes you out, I suppose. I'm thinking of those rides. But it's pushing out, isn't it? Right. The equator. Earth is spinning that way. You've seen it on this. Right? There's the equator. And they show you the bulge. Right? Because the Earth is rotating, centrifugal force is exerted. This opposes gravity. And this opposition keeps everything in balance. So Earth is spinning, the moon is here, pulling on that water, right, creating a bulge. And then we have the centrifugal forces exerted as it's spinning, right? This opposes gravity, and this opposition keeps everything in balance. On the other side of the Earth, farthest away from the moon, another bulge occurs. This happens because there is a weaker gravitational pull, and the water tries to move away from the surface of the Earth. Now listen, right? This, it's just horseradish. The Earth is spinning. The moon is attracting the water, the bulge comes from here, you can see it on the equator line. As Earth is spinning, it's creating a centrifugal force, which is trying to push the water away, but that balances everything out. And the reason that we have a bulge at the back is because the moon's gravity is weakest there. Because the Earth, there is a weaker gravitational pull, and the water tries to move away from the surface of the Earth. Look, this is all highly illogical. It doesn't matter what anybody says, right? Again, here we are. What? The moon, it's only just over a quarter of the size of planet Earth, right? It's 30 Earth diameters away from us, 9 meters. You've seen me do it at this scale. These are to scale. It's 110 of its own diameter away from us. 110. The moon of its diameters away from us, and it is pulling on the tides, on the water, creating a bulge, but pulling so hard, but just not as hard at the back, so that the centrifugal Earth as it spins, tries, but it can't push the water because of the moon's weaker gravitational pull. So it goes out and creates a bulge at the rear end. Listen. As cool as the moon is, I feel that my intelligence is being insulted by Newton's bullshit. Can't say it too much clearer than that. 30 Earth diameters away. You need to listen to what is being said. It doesn't matter what has been taught. What are we talking here? When I say it's a supermoon, it's obviously a supermoon, isn't it? Let me carry on. See, I spot these things. Right. Oh, it gets better. Don't worry, we're halfway there. The tidal pattern so established on the entirely smooth globe can be clearly seen to bring about 2 high tides each lunar day. Right? One for the gravity-derived bulge towards the moon, the first one here. The other for the bulge away from the Earth. 2 low tides occur on those parts of the globe at right angles to the moon. Now, there's going to be less water up there. Look, it's a bulge, right? Now I could bring the globe over and do the... Why do we see the highest tides up here? Which one is it, Newton? Why do we see the highest tides up here and the other one, the 5th highest, down in Los Gallegos in Argentina, when the tidal, the bulge, it's here? So what is happening? I'll tell you what is happening, not what they say. The evening high tides on successive days tend to be more similar than the tides occurring on the morning and evening of the same day. The rotation of the Earth influences the times of tides. If the moon revolved around the Earth at the same speed as the Earth's own rotation, a high tide would occur at a fixed point on the surface each 12 hours. Now again, I threw that moon. I threw the moon away, didn't I? Look, let me pause you for a second. Oh, a bit of chaos. I can't find Daisy the cow anywhere. Heard her mewing, but I couldn't have time to stop. Right, the rotation of the Earth. Right, come over here. This is where it is not enough to just nod one's head. Now, the rotation of the Earth influences the times of tides. If the moon revolved around the Earth at the same speed as the Earth's own rotation, a high tide would occur at a fixed point on the surface each 12 hours. If the moon rotated at the exact same speed as, or orbited us at the exact same speed as we turn on our axis, right? Why would there be a high tide at different spots on the planet every 12 hours? It would stay in the same spot, wouldn't it? Because the gravitational pull of the moon would be bang on the very same spot. So why would it move? Why would it move? It wouldn't. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? If it was always just off above Cuba and it flicked in between Cuba and Peru, the north-south of the equator thing, because of the axis tilt. If it was always there when we rotated on our axis, what would you expect? You'd expect to see the same high tide in the same spots all of the time. Common sense. But here, you can hear it clearly says, the rotation of the Earth influences the times of tides. If the moon revolved round Earth at the same speed as the Earth's own rotation, a high tide would occur at a fixed point on the surface each 12 hours. No. If it was always in the same spot as we were spinning on our axis, it would be in the same spot. However, although the moon moves around the Earth in the same direction as the Earth is rotating, right? It moves just slightly slower. So the Earth has to rotate for an extra 50 minutes each day to bring the same point under the moon. That's wrong. That's wrong. We spin faster. Why does it have to spin an extra 50 minutes every day to bring the same spot in line with the moon? We spin faster than it. What it means is the moon would have to somehow speed up, or we would have to stop. Again, that is illogical, right? It's illogical. Earth in the same direction as the Earth is rotating, it moves just slightly slower. So the Earth has to rotate for an extra 50 minutes each day to bring the same point under the moon. This means that each of the two spring tides will be 25 minutes later each day. Ready? The moon complicates things still further by not moving around the Earth in an exact orbit. It swings elliptically backward and forward in relation to the equator, setting the oceans oscillating in two types of tidal rhythms. In some areas, the result is the pattern with which Europeans are familiar. 2 high and 2 low waters a day at roughly similar heights. These are semi-diurnal oscillations. Elsewhere, such as in the Gulf of Mexico, where I've also fished loads, there is only 1 high and 1 low tide each 24 hours. Love you, mate. See you soon. Each 24 hours, there is only 1 high and 1 low in the Gulf of Mexico. Up, down. That's strange considering the equator line is right there, don't we think? Why on earth has the Gulf of Mexico, look, isn't it crazy? I fished there and by the tides, and it had never occurred to me. I knew that there's only 1 high and 1 low, but see how easy it is to forget crucial things. Why on earth would the Gulf of Mexico have only 1 high that takes 12 hours to come in, and then a low? It takes another 12 hours to drop. When other places have a high, low, high and low. Isn't that a bit strange? And if somebody says it's not, then really, I don't know what to say. This is a diurnal oscillation. In still other regions, the Pacific and Indian Oceans, for example, there are 2 high and 2 low waters a day, but the difference in heights of the morning and afternoon high waters is considerable. These are called mixed tides. So what we have now, right, is semi-diurnal. You have semi-diurnal, right? We have diurnal, so just diurnal, and then we have a mixed. Did say mixed? Yeah, we call them mixed tides. I see. So we have a semi-diurnal, a diurnal, and a mixed. They didn't know why there were currents 45 years ago. They did not know what created the currents on this planet just 45 years ago. Right. When sun and moon pull on the world ocean to create a bulge on either side of the earth, it is not the bulge that is the tide. This can be proved by checking the time of a particular high tide against the position of the moon. If the bulge were causing the tide, the moon would be directly overhead. But the time difference between the passage of the moon and high water can be anything up to 12 hours and 25 minutes. This is not to say that high water will never occur when the moon is overhead, but only that if it did, it would be purely coincidental. Now, I've gone back and forth with a couple of people where I've said the moon does not dictate there is going to be a high tide or a low tide. You must hear what there is no pattern. They've just said you can prove that it's not the bulge because when there is a high tide, check to see if the moon's there. It doesn't make any difference whether it's there or not. It's always going to be somewhere. The moon does not move the water on this planet. One high tide and one low tide in the Gulf of Mexico that's only slightly north of the equator. Right? Look. Gulf of Mexico. There's the equator line. It is open water. The bulge, you'd think, doesn't gravity move at the speed of light? Doesn't it take 1.3 seconds to be here? Aren't fluids so much more attracted to the moon? A cup of tea, you could be able to detect the gravitational pull of the moon, but it's just a little bit too small. But then I mentioned the Caspian Sea. If you cannot see, they have claimed knowledge that cannot be known. They've just said in black and white that the moon doesn't have anything to do with the tides. If it is above during a high tide, it's purely coincidental. That's what I've been saying all along. People have been saying, no, but I'm in New Zealand. When I fish, high tides, when the moon is up there. There will be times that you fish on a high tide and the moon will be nowhere. It will not be in the night sky, right? It's unbelievable. The currents, they do not know what is creating the currents. 45 years ago, the wind, pressure from the wind and heat, different temperatures of the ocean. In the Antarctic it's cold, it flows under, and then the tides have nothing to do with the moon. You cannot find a pattern. You cannot find a pattern. You saw the tides, the Bay of Fundy. Let's do it again. Why is it that when a tide comes in, it always flows out the same direction it came in at? I'm not saying the Bay of Fundy because it's obviously an inlet. Don't they say it's an oscillation when the high tide coincides with oscillation of the planet? There is nothing forced about this high tide or any of them. I say forced, I mean pulled. It's like there has been something added to the bottom of the ocean, and tide, it's water displacement. It has to go somewhere. So, and then it drops. It's a lot of water displacement. It is not the moon. The moon is not moving any of the water on this planet. Now it's just come up to high tide. Why is it that the Gulf of Mexico only has one high tide? It's like a 12-hour in between. Why? Where's the logic? Where's the logic in the Gulf of Mexico having one big 12-hour stint of an incoming and then a 12-hour stint of a dropping tide, when everywhere, most other places have two? We have the Bay of Fundy. In there, right? We've just seen the incoming tide. What's it there? Halifax, so it's in there, right? It's got the biggest, it is the biggest ocean, the biggest tide on this planet. And look where it is. In relation to the Gulf of Mexico, that's only getting one high over 12 hours and then another one low taking 12 hours. Further away from the equator, we have the highest differential tide on the planet. And it is not the moon, because you've just heard them say that if it was the moon, when you look up, it's purely coincidental. What about reading in between the lines? Knowledge has been claimed but cannot be known about so many things. And another thing, when the tides are in between, when there's a high and a low, the moon is constantly moving, isn't it? It doesn't chill for an hour at the top or at the low of the tide. Bulge. It's a continuous, isn't it? It should be a continuous. You should be able to find a pattern that would suggest it is the moon, but you cannot find a pattern. Out the same way it came. It doesn't leave Fundy and turn north or south violently to run around, does it? It heads straight back out the way it came. The same as when there's currents. When you're fishing out deep and you think it's tidal, it comes one way, stops for a spell. It just goes dead, bang. Like the anchor just drops straight down, maybe for half an hour. And then you slowly get the receding, but in the very same direction that it came from. That isn't logical either. And anybody who says it is not thinking logically. It's not enough to just nod and accept these things. Something is well out. Water does not have anything to do with Newton's gravitational whatever from 1680 whenever, or 16 whenever it was, right? Where's my glasses? We're nearly done. Right. Let me just read that last bit. If the bulge were causing the tide, the moon would be directly overhead, but the time difference between the passage of the moon and high water can be anything up to 12 hours and 25 minutes. 12 hours and 25 minutes. That is right there. There is not a pattern. That one sentence, it's telling you there is no pattern, right? It's all here. What causes tidal flow then is not the bulge, but the flow of water horizontal to the Earth's surface as it moves to make the bulge. When a body of water, in this case the individual oceans, is subjected to a regular disturbance, in this case the attraction of the sun and moon, it starts a rocking motion from side to side along a virtually motionless central line. And we know that that motionless central line would be the equator, right? Where are we? Line. The time taken for each rocking motion is determined by the shape of the coastlines surrounding the body of water, its depth, atmospheric conditions, and any submarine features such as mountains and trenches. The time the rock takes is called the natural period of oscillation, and each ocean basin has its own natural period. When the natural period of oscillation is close to that of the tidal period, a momentum builds up and high tides result. These are resonance tides. There is very little tidal range in small bodies of water if these are cut off from the open ocean. Other page, it said cup of tea. That is why the tides in the Mediterranean, open to the Atlantic only through the narrow Strait of Gibraltar, are so small as to be almost unnoticeable. And I know that because I grew up in Mallorca, in Spain, in the Mediterranean Sea. Coastal seas open to the ocean have a wider tidal range and many often get resonance tides. The rocking motion of the ocean is transmitted in the form of waves to the coastal sea, which then sets up its own natural period of oscillation. If the natural period corresponds to the tidal period, resonance tides occur. This explains why there can be widely varying tidal ranges over quite short distances of coastline. Bullshit. No. At the centre of the English Channel, for example, the spring tide range is about 7 feet. Not far away in the Bristol Channel, the spring tide range at Avonmouth is 40 feet. One of the greatest in the world. Bristol in the UK. Listen, folks, what you have yourselves here is some explanations for some things that are happening that are illogical. The explanations, 40 feet, not 31, are illogical. Look, I'm not a scientist, but I'm not a freaking idiot either. When you tell me that the bulge isn't what creates the tides, and we know this because during a high tide, check up and see if the moon is right above you. If it is, it's only a coincidence. When you tell me that, you're telling me there is no pattern whatsoever. And there isn't. There is no pattern. There's another little bit and we are done. Bay of Fundy between Nova Scotia and mainland Canada. The bay has a natural period of oscillation of about 12 hours. Its resonance tide reinforced by the incoming Atlantic waters, normally rises 40 feet twice a day, reaching 70 feet at spring tides. Tides can be predicted accurately for a given place once measurements of tidal range have been made at that point over a period of time. Did you hear that? Tides can be predicted accurately for a given place once measurements of tidal range have been made at that point over a period of time. That is saying, just like the solar eclipses, they don't predict solar eclipses. There is a pattern that happens once a solar eclipse takes place, and it runs over 18 years, and it's called a saros, I do believe, not 18 years, over 1,800 years, I think it is. It takes 18 years for each saros. So if there is a solar eclipse in one place, it will take 18 years for that same solar eclipse to happen again, but slightly out with the moon. And then 18 years after that, it's 18 years and a few days or something, bang, it will happen again, but less of the sun will get blocked. And so on, and so on. I'm sure it was 1,000 something years that it takes. They're not predicting solar eclipses, right? It's a pattern that's already been happening. They just need to look at the pattern and they know when the next one is going to be and where. It's that easy. And quite a few multiple solar eclipses can be happening at the same time. That's why you get different ones all over the place. It's the same with tides. You heard it right there. People saying, well, how would they be able to predict the tides the way they do then? They don't. All they're doing is copying previous records. It's right there. You can predict accurate times once measurements have been taken from a specific point. Boom, 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 boom. Listen, it's all right here. But you try and find something like this on Google. They will tell you they know everything because they've got satellites under the ocean, satellites above the ocean, drones, radars bouncing off of everywhere. The technology and the quantum stuff. They are claiming knowledge that cannot be known, and they are lying. The moon does not have anything to do. Sure, I hope. You hear Daisy the cow? Probably hit her with the second time I threw the moon out. The moon does not have anything to do with the tides on this planet. They can say whatever they want to say, but you need to take these things into consideration. The size of Earth, the distance to the moon, and the size of the moon compared to Earth. Is it logical to think that it is dragging, that it has a gravitational pull so strong that, but it cannot and doesn't shift one single millimeter in any of the closed bodies of water? With a pull like that, you would think that the Caspian Sea and some of the Great Lakes, why wouldn't they just go slightly? Again, it doesn't matter what people say. If the moon is doing that to the oceans, those bodies of water would move, just like your cup of tea or your cup of coffee. But they don't, do they? In here, let me read it again. but the time difference between the passage of the moon and high water can be anything up to 12 hours and 25 minutes. That's it. It could be 6 hours, 5, 7, 8 minutes, 20, anything between 12 hours and 25 minutes. That is not a pattern. Gulf of Mexico. High, 12 hours. Low, 12 hours. Near the equator. Bay of Fundy. Fairly up north, right? 2 high tides, low tides in 24 hours. The highest on the planet. The moon. Don't give me resonance tides. Knowledge has been claimed but cannot be known. And they're lying. Newton, the shoulders of giants? No. Liars and charlatans. They're claiming knowledge that cannot be known. And with that knowledge, it piggybacks them. And they claim even more. And then more. Like in Top Gun. Kid, your body's cashing checks your ego cannot cash. What is it? Your body's cashing checks that your ego, yeah. It's like the moon thing. He claimed it in 1969. And then, for the last 50 years, been trying to catch up to prove. They claimed an achievement that hadn't been achieved. And now it's getting pretty tense. Listen, folks, you do not have at your disposal books. If I hadn't had this book, I don't need the book to prove to me that the moon is not affecting the tides. I know it isn't. I know because I know that if it were, that other bodies of water would be moving. The Mediterranean Sea. I understand that it is not the moon for that simple reason. Another one, the new one, the tide, when it comes in, or that current, stops. Doesn't matter where you are, it goes back in the direction that it came. How does that work with the bulge theory? It doesn't. It's illogical. What is more logical is to believe that somewhere, there is mass. It's water displacement. And it is happening at different times all over the planet. Lots of water displacement, enough that in some places the tide is jumping up by 70 feet, and in other places, just like here, 2 meters. Just up the road or at Stanwich Bay, massive tide, 6 meters maybe. And 2 a day. The Gulf of Mexico. Why did this not trigger with me? 1 high over 12, and then 12 to drop to the low. Yet up north, it's in, out, in, out, in, out. So how does that work? Up, in, out, down, in, out, up, in, out, down, in, out. Folks, there is something seriously not adding up. Considering the Gulf of Mexico is only slightly north of the equator, and that is where the bulge is, what is being said does not coincide with what is actually happening. It's the same as the solar eclipse. When they say there is a 299,792,458 meters per second speed of light, and that it takes 8 minutes for the light to get here from the sun, the freaking photons, and there is a solar eclipse. It cannot happen with a light delay. It's illogical. And here we are. Newton and the water. They don't know. They didn't know 45 years ago what is creating the currents. And they've just told you that high tide doesn't mean the moon's up there. It could be anywhere. It could be 12 hours and 25 minutes out from your high tide. That says no pattern, if you can think logically. Folks, I read this once, and I'm here. And as I've gone on, I've seen more. It's Spot. It's highly logical, Captain. Thank you, Commander Spot. Folks, the single greatest tidal range in the world is in the Bay of Fundy between Nova Scotia and mainland Canada. The bay has a natural period of oscillation of about 12 hours. Its resonance tide reinforced by the incoming Atlantic waters, normally rises 40 feet twice a day, reaching 70 feet at spring tides. Listen up. Tides can be predicted accurately for a given place once measurements of tidal range have been made at that point over a period of time. What we know about the waves. What do you know about the waves? You've got the moon wrong. You don't know what is creating the currents. And I somehow overlooked the fact that in the Gulf of Mexico, where I have fished redfish and mackerel, there was good fishing. We used to go. What time's high tide, Dr. Shepherd? It's only one high tide and then one low in the 24 hours. Tell yourselves it's logical, folks. Tell yourselves that's all logical. Let's just look, it's already an hour. Why wouldn't we do the Bay of Fundy one more time? That wouldn't be logical. It's coming up. Yeah, it does. Anybody who's fished will understand that it stops, and then trickles back the same way. Not being smaller bodies. It doesn't matter, again, what anybody says. The smaller bodies of water on this planet would shift if it were the moon. It would shift. It's an insult, once again, to people's intelligence. The light radiating from the sun, whether it be up the road or 150 million kilometers away, is absolute. Number 4, stupidity is an opinion that ignores a fact. Sun, moon. The tides, no. The moon has nothing to do with the tides. You've just heard that the bulge doesn't even have anything to do with the tide. Isn't gravitational pulling supposed to be speed of light stuff? If that's the case, why does the Gulf of Mexico only have one tide in the 24 hours? One up, 12 hours, one down, 12 hours. Why is that? It's on the equator, just north of the equator. But there, up in the Bay of Fundy, 2. In, out. And they are the highest on the planet. Resonance tides, people under siege. It's got nothing to do with the shoulders of giants and everything to do with liars and charlatans. All right, folks. God, I hope this is postable. I didn't get too angry, did I? Sorry, Daisy. I'll fight you in the morning. Laters.